Well, U.S. President Trump's continued push to take ownership of Greenland has stoked tensions with the EU. This, combined with threats of tariffs, have seen both American and European stock markets take a hit today, leaving the future relationship between the two allies on very shaky ground. For more on this, we're joined by Dr. Aurel Braun, professor of international relations and political science at the University of Toronto. Professor, thanks as always for joining us.
Thank you.
How realistic is this threat by Donald Trump, do you feel?
It very much is realistic in terms of tariffs because he has said he's going to impose 10% and then in June up to 25%. And this is part of a type of coercive diplomacy. Now, Mr. Trump can also change his mind very quickly. Whereas in the past, one looked at foreign policy changes that would take a year or months. Under Donald Trump, it could be changed in a New York minute. And this has created a natural volatility in international relations as well as in international markets. But he seems to focus on getting Greenland. And this is not something entirely new in terms of American policy. But the way he's going about it, the brutality of his language, the pressure that he's exercising, the stress that he's placing on the NATO alliance, that is something new.
And has the U.S. tried to get Greenland before? And why is it so important to them?
Greenland is strategically important. It is part of the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap. This is where submarines travel, Russian and Chinese submarines. This is where not only Russia has greatly increased its Arctic presence, but China has become what it calls itself to be a near Arctic state. There are navigational possibilities. There are vast resources. So this is an extremely important area. And the United States has tried to gain ownership of Greenland before. The United States has a history of purchasing Alaska, the Louisiana territory. But in this case, Mr. Trump, instead of making a very generous financial offer, that perhaps, there are only 56,000 people in Greenland, and Denmark has increasingly tried to distance itself from Greenland by granting it more autonomy because it has been very expensive. Perhaps some kind of deal could have been worked out. But the way Mr. Trump has gone about it is he has alienated key allies. In some ways, ironically, even though this is supposed to be a fear of China, he is pushing European allies into the arms of China.
I was going to say, what are the dangers with this if Denmark and the rest of the European Union stands firm and says, no, Greenland's not for sale? Would this be enough to break up NATO?
I doubt it, because NATO is a remarkably resilient organization. This is the longest lasting alliance in human history, and it is political as well as military. And so one cannot say with certainty that it will not break up, but I think there is sufficient resiliency there, and there are cooler heads, and often Mr. Trump backs down. So this is a crisis. Now, Mr. Carney called it a rupture, and I think that may be an exaggeration, but certainly it is extremely stressful. And we can see how various countries, in trying to become, let's say, more independent of the United States, are increasing dependence on China. Look at the deal that Canada has made with China. We may be getting up to 49,000 electrical vehicles. And you can see in the reaction of the auto industry and the reaction of the trade negotiators in the United States, that this is a very dangerous development. You can see it in the case of the UK. The government has just approved a new vast embassy in London that the previous government had turned down, that many in the Labour Party and the Liberal Party view as a security threat, because Keir Starmer wants to have closer relations with China as a counterbalance in some ways to the United States.
And do you see other countries leaning that way too in Europe? And then beyond, I imagine beyond. I mean, Africa, I know there's already a huge influence from China, but elsewhere, could you see China expanding its sphere of influence?
Certainly China is trying to do that because they have a huge amount of difficulty domestically. The economy is not doing that well. They're doing spectacularly well in terms of exports. To sustain those exports, they need to have important relations with countries. They need to have the kind of relations that make these countries want to accept Chinese exports in a way that is favorable to China. And the normal reaction now would be alarm at China's pressures. It has been seen that the Belt and Road Initiative comes with strings. And one would think that Canada and the Europeans would be very cautious about that. But in reacting to Mr. Trump, they may inadvertently provide an advantage to China.
And that is a very real danger. How do you see this eventually unfolding with Greenland? Or is it impossible to tell?
With Mr. Trump, prediction doesn't work because he changes his mind so very quickly, and it could happen by the minute. But there are various options with Greenland. There could be an enhanced security package. There could be an arrangement similar to Puerto Rico, where it would be a kind of Commonwealth arrangement where the 56,000 or so, and it's a very tiny population, would have the right to vote in the United States and would be citizens, but it wouldn't be completely part of the United States. So there can be creative diplomacy, but clearly Mr. Trump has focused on this. He has even used the Nobel Prize to suggest that this is a punitive measure, but I think that is just a way of teasing or perhaps of humiliating the Europeans. But he is not like to give up on this without getting something major in return. Okay. We just don't know what the contours of that settlement will be, but it certainly would be in the interest of all of the parties to find some kind of settlement which would increase Western cohesion and security, because ultimately this is about dealing with China. Russia is a relatively minor player. It's doing horrific things in Ukraine, but the biggest threat to Western democracies is Communist China. And let us not have any illusions about the goals of Xi Jinping.
I have to wrap it up there, Doctor, but thank you as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dr. Aurel Braun is a professor of international relations and political science at the University of Toronto.